Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at the basics of Robert Anton Wilson's Prometheus Rising. This book offers profound insights into the human condition, but it is also a complex and technical work, which can be difficult to grasp for many people. The aim of this video is therefore to distill it down to its most important components and make them as easy to understand as possible. Prometheus Rising is written as if someone took a lab manual, a psychology textbook, and an esoteric training course, mixed them together and said, "Here, this is how your mind, biology, and nervous system actually work. And here is how you can learn to use this knowledge to shape yourself and your life." It is a book about how a human nervous system builds a world, how that world keeps you trapped, and how you can begin to redesign the whole process for more freedom, joy, and clarity. At the center of the book is a simple but very sharp model of the mind that Wilson calls the thinker and the prover. The thinker is the part of you that can entertain ideas, stories, and explanations about what is going on. The prover is the part that silently organizes your perceptions and emotions so that they match whatever the thinker already believes. In practice, this means that once a belief is firmly accepted, your mind and nervous system will work hard to make the world seem to confirm it. If the thinker is convinced that people are hostile, the prover will highlight every unfriendly glance and will quietly ignore or reinterpret the moments of kindness. If the thinker is convinced that you are lucky, the prover will notice coincidences and opportunities and string them together into a story about good fortune. Whatever the thinker thinks, the prover tries to prove. From this, it also follows logically that this goes for any belief system you adhere to. And it is not a stretch to imagine that the more incentive you have to hold on to said belief system, the harder the prover will work to confirm it. It does not make the belief system wrong necessarily. It just means that you will be biased toward information that supports it. This is furthermore affected by the stage of development you were in when the belief was formed, as well as your personality type. We will return to this in more detail in just a little moment, but the general rule is that the earlier a belief is formed and the stronger the personality leans toward black and white thinking, the more hardwired it becomes. Where does the title come in? In myth, Prometheus steals fire from the gods and brings it to humanity, suffering punishment for that act. For Wilson, fire stands for neurological self-knowledge and the power to rewrite our own programs. The book suggests that human history so far has been a long night in which domesticated primates shuffled through tunnels laid down by genes and rulers. The rising of Prometheus would be the moment when a critical mass of people start to use their full brain capacities consciously. Then, the fire of wider awareness would no longer be a secret of mystics and rebels. It would be part of ordinary education and daily life. Wilson treats the link between belief and perception as a piece of neuropsychology. The brain is described as a kind of biological computer made of electrochemical tissue. The hardware is the physical brain cells. The software is everything that has been written into those cells over time. Genetic tendencies, very early imprints, later conditioning, and all the learning that builds on top of that. Keep this distinction in mind, because it is important when separating neurological facts from what has been attached to those facts. Understanding what we are talking about in this manner puts a distance between us and our interpretations. When we see the interpretations not as facts, but as products of our neurology and our individual programming that has usually, mostly unconsciously, been layered on top of the neurology. Now, genetic imperatives are the built-in programs shared by the species, reflexes, basic drives, simple emotional reactions that keep you alive. Imprints are more personal. At certain vulnerable periods in development, the brain is especially open, and whatever happens then tends to be written in very deeply. The first imprint around birth and early infancy concerns safety and feeding. Later imprints concern territory and power, language and meaning, sexuality and morality. Once an imprint is laid down, it defines a set of limits inside which later conditioning and learning take place. You can add new habits and ideas, but you tend to do so within the boundaries set by those early experiences. From this point of view, a person is not just walking around with a fixed and objective picture of the world. Each of us is operating inside what Wilson calls a reality tunnel. A reality tunnel is what we just touched upon. The combined result of your hardware and software, your genetic tendencies, your imprints, the culture you grew up in, the language you use, the stories you have believed, and the habits you act out every day. Through this tunnel you filter the flood of signals that hits your senses. The prover makes sure that whatever comes in is interpreted in a way that fits the tunnel. This is, for example, why two people can look at the same event and come away with utterly different conclusions, each feeling completely convinced that they saw reality itself. Prometheus Rising offers a map of how these tunnels form and how they can be changed. The map is the 8-circuit model of consciousness. Wilson borrows and adapts this model from Timothy Leary and presents the human nervous system as a set of 8 functional circuits that came online in evolutionary stages. 4 of them are older and conservative, concerned mainly with survival on this planet. 4 are newer and more experimental, opening toward wider awareness and more flexible behavior. What follows is a brief overview of the circuits to give you the very basics necessary for understanding their relation to what we are talking about here. The first circuit is the oral biosurvival circuit. This comes into play in infancy, from birth to approximately 1 year of age, when the newborn learns to approach what feels safe and nourishing, and to retreat from what feels threatening. It is linked to feeding, cuddling, and bodily security. If this phase is mostly met with warmth and reliability, the imprint tends to be, "The world is safe, I can explore." If it is overshadowed by danger or coldness, the imprint tends to be, "The world is unsafe, I must cling or withdraw." Much of adult anxiety and trust has its roots here. The second circuit is the anal emotional territorial circuit. It wakes up at approximately 1 to 3 years of age, when the toddler rises, walks around and tests power inside the family tribe. This circuit handles dominance and submission, anger, pride, resentment, and all the emotional games of pecking order. It is the mammalian politics inside each of us. Depending on early wins and losses, a person may imprint as a top dog who expects to win, a bottom dog who expects defeat, or something between. Later conflicts about status, respect, and resentment echo this circuitry. The third circuit is the time-binding semantic circuit. It wakes up at approximately 3 to 6 years of age. Here, language, symbols, and tools come in. This circuit classifies, names, calculates, and plans. Through it, we build maps of the world. Scientific theories, religious systems, political ideologies, everyday common sense. It allows us to bind time by passing information across generations. But it also traps us in our favorite abstractions. The prover loyally reshapes experience so that it seems to justify whatever the third circuit already believes. The fourth circuit is the moral socio-sexual circuit. It turns on at approximately 11 to 15 years of age with puberty and the first experiences of intercourse and romance. Here, the nervous system learns local rules about gender roles, mating, family, and what counts as right and wrong behavior. Adult pleasure, shame, pride, and responsibility are processed through this circuit. Different cultures install very different programs here, which is why morality and gender expectations in the areas just discussed vary so widely across history and geography. A small note is in order here. This might sound speculative, and in a way it is. But try applying it to your own life and memories, and you will see how this plays out. Look at your earliest experiences that relate to this type of formation, such as fights with other children, moments of victory or defeat, disappointments, what your parents taught you from an early age, and so on. Then see if you can find correlations between how you think, feel, speak, and act, both in your own privacy and in social settings, and your early imprinting. These 4 circuits that we have just gone through, taken together, make up the ordinary adult personality. They organize bodily safety, emotional status, thinking and speaking, and sexual and social roles. Prometheus Rising argues that most people spend most of their lives almost entirely inside these lower circuits, reacting from old imprints and acting like robots. The reality tunnel is built so early and reinforced so often that it feels like solid reality itself. Religion, advertising, education, and politics all make heavy use of this fact. Families, schools, armies, cults, and media outlets shape tunnels, often without anyone consciously plotting it, even if conscious manipulation is also a very real thing. Prometheus Rising claims that we have at least 4 more potential circuits that can be activated, and that these open the door to a very different way of living. The 5th circuit is the holistic neurosomatic circuit. When this turns on, you feel body and mind working together in a relaxed and pleasurable way. Ordinary sensations become vivid. Movement feels graceful and playful. People often reach this state in moments of intense exercise, yoga, dance, deep relaxation, or, in some cases, through chemicals. Illness and health both start to look less like accidents and more like patterns that respond to attention and belief. This is also the circuit that you more and more lean into the more you relax your nervous system and start operating more from the parasympathetic nervous system and less from the sympathetic nervous system. We have a playlist with videos on how to do this available on the end screen toward the end of the video. The 6th circuit is the collective neurogenetic circuit. Here, awareness reaches down into the long story of life itself. People who touch this level report experiences of ancestral memory, archetypal visions, and a sense of connection with the entire biosphere. Wilson connects this with what some traditions call the world's soul, or the collective unconscious, and with the information stored in DNA. On this circuit, you may feel that your personal story is one small thread in a much larger evolutionary tapestry. The 7th circuit is the metaprogramming circuit. This is central for the practical side of Prometheus Rising. When this circuit begins to function, you become aware of your own programs as programs. Instead of simply being angry, afraid, or proud, you can notice, my nervous system is running a 2nd circuit dominance script, or a 1st circuit fear script. You can then begin to change the script. Wilson describes this as cybernetic consciousness, the programmer becoming self-programmer. He illustrates it with an imagined advanced computer that can rewrite all its own routines. The neural equivalent is the part of you that can observe your reality tunnel, compare it with other tunnels, and deliberately install new beliefs and new habits. The 8th circuit is the non-local quantum circuit. Here, awareness seems to loosen completely from the ordinary limits of space and time. Wilson discusses out-of-body experiences, near-death episodes, precognitive dreams, and various forms of extrasensory perception. He links these to modern physics models of non-locality, where events can be correlated across distance without any clear signal traveling between them. At this level, the nervous system might be tuning into a wider field that is not limited by the usual sensory channels. If you look closely at these circuits, it becomes clear that the first 4 are built to ensure survival, stability, and predictable functioning within whatever reality tunnel was formed early in life. They help you navigate safety, power, language, and social rules, but they also tend to keep you repeating what you already know. The last 4, by contrast, are oriented toward flexibility, creativity, and forms of awareness that loosen the grip of those early imprints. They give you access to new ways of sensing, thinking, and relating to experience, allowing growth that exceeds the limits of the inherited or conditioned self. The model furthermore reminds you that your present way of thinking and feeling is not the top floor of the building. It is one level in a layered system. You can learn to visit other levels and eventually to remodel the whole structure. To make this concrete, Prometheus Rising is full of exercises. Wilson insists that reading theory is not enough. Real understanding comes when you use your own nervous system as a laboratory. Some exercises are simple belief experiments. For example, you are invited to convince yourself for a short time that you are unattractive and dull. Go out and notice how people respond. Then later convince yourself that you are charming and witty, and again observe the difference. The point is not to decide once and for all which belief is correct. The point is to demonstrate in direct experience how the thinker and prover relationship shapes social feedback. Other exercises train selective attention and reality tunnel flexibility. You might be asked to visualize finding a coin, look for it on your walks and watch what happens. Then you interpret the result once as coincidence and once as mind over matter and compare which frame seems to increase your success. The point is not to settle an abstract argument about how the world works. It is to feel how a shift in model changes your behavior and your results. At higher levels, the exercises become explicit metaprogramming. Wilson asks you to imagine a futuristic brain computer floating in front of you, able to translate any reality tunnel into any other. You feed it questions about people you resent and ask it to show you how those people see the world and how you look from inside their tunnel. You ask it to analyze your own beliefs about love, money, death, or politics, and to propose alternative tunnels. You also test affirmations while carefully monitoring your degree of belief. The metaprogramming circuit, he says, only responds when you believe at least partially that the new program is possible. A recurring theme is that freedom does not mean having no conditioning. Freedom means being able to choose and change conditioning. You will always have hardware and software. You will always have a thinker and a prover. You cannot step outside the nervous system and float in a pure, description-free realm for very long. But you can stop taking one particular description as final. You can regard each belief system as a tool rather than as absolute truth. In practical life, this looks like the ability to switch between modes, to use a rational tunnel when solving technical problems, an empathic tunnel when dealing with loved ones, a playful tunnel when creating art, a quiet, spacious tunnel when meditating or resting. Simply put, you have much more freedom of choice when it comes to your experiences and how you interpret them than it usually appears. Prometheus Rising also explores what happens when these capacities are not developed. The chapter on the snafu principle, for example, describes how hierarchies in families, corporations, and governments tend to distort communication. People lower in the pecking order fear punishment, so they tell superiors what they think those superiors want to hear. Superiors start to live in a tunnel made of flattery and filtered data. Mistakes multiply. The system as a whole behaves stupidly, even if the people inside are quite intelligent. Wilson argues that only metaprogramming, self-observation, and deliberate reality tunnel expansion can counteract this tendency. Another major theme is acceleration. In the later chapters, Wilson points to studies suggesting that human knowledge has been increasing faster and faster, and that this trend might continue. He suggests that the higher brain circuits are emerging as evolutionary tools to cope with this flood of information and complexity. Longer lifespans, increased sensitivity to subtle signals, and more flexible identity might be necessary simply to stay sane in a rapidly changing world. Quantum evolution, in his terms, is the sudden jump to a new level of organization, not just in technology, but in consciousness itself. In summary, Prometheus Rising suggests that much of what you take to be reality is shaped by early imprints, acquired beliefs, and the automatic habits of the nervous system. Through the model of the thinker and the prover, the book shows how your mind continually confirms whatever you already believe. building a personal reality tunnel that feels absolute but is actually flexible. The 8-circuit model then explains how these tunnels form, how the lower circuits keep you oriented towards survival and repetition, and how the higher circuits open the door to more fluid, creative, and expansive ways of living. Wilson's key message is that you are not locked inside the programs you inherited. By observing your reactions, experimenting with new beliefs, and learning to shift between different levels of awareness, you can begin to rewrite your own conditioning. Freedom becomes the ability to choose how you interpret experience and which version of yourself you bring to each moment, rather than unconsciously repeating the past. Finally, the practical message of Prometheus Rising is both challenging and encouraging. It says, in effect, that you are not stuck with the way you were imprinted. The fear, guilt, shame, and rigid thinking that feel like solid character may be old software written under pressure. You can start to examine those programs, play with alternative beliefs, try new behaviors, and watch how your reality responds. You can explore the body in ways that invite the neurosomatic circuit to wake up. You can study myth, art, and synchronicity to listen for the voice of the deeper evolutionary script. You can practice seeing each person you meet as a unique tunnel rather than as a role in your drama, which already loosens the grip of the second circuit. Most of all, you can train the metaprogramming circuit by taking responsibility for what you allow the thinker to think. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you can say, "My nervous system is running an anger routine right now." Instead of saying, "That is just the way the world is," you can ask what tunnel makes it look that way, and what happens if you try another tunnel for a while. This shift from being programmed to programming is the heart of the self-transformation that the book aims at. Wilson once wrote that we are all giants raised by pygmies who have learned to walk with a permanent mental crouch, and that the task is to stand up to full height. Prometheus Rising is his attempt to provide instructions for straightening the spine of consciousness. It gives you a map of the circuits, a model of the thinker and prover, a diagnosis of reality tunnels and social robotization, and a toolbox of experiments. If you truly apply it to your own experience and treat it as a set of exercises rather than as a mere theory, the promise is that you can gradually gain more mastery of your life, not by forcing the world to obey your will, but by learning how your own mind and nervous system can be tuned, stretched, and freed. If you want to explore Wilson's work further, we have a playlist with videos on different topics in his books, available on the end screen right now, together with a video on self-observation as it is taught within the Fourth Way system, a path of awakening through awareness and inner work in daily life. You are also reminded of the playlist with videos on how to relax the nervous system. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.